Canada is on the verge of a bold move, considering the removal of its 100% tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles. This decision could mark a turning point for the country's automotive landscape, with far-reaching consequences for both the economy and the environment. For years, these tariffs have kept Chinese EVs out of Canadian showrooms, but now, the government is rethinking its approach in the face of mounting pressures. This isn't just a policy tweak. It could upend the North American EV market and strain Canada's relationship with the US. If Canada opens its doors to Chinese EVs, it could create a ripple effect across the continent, challenging the status quo and potentially reshaping trade dynamics with its closest neighbor. The tariffs were meant to protect Canadian industry and foster a homegrown EV supply chain, but things have changed. Domestic manufacturers have struggled to keep up with demand, and the high cost of EVs has slowed adoption among Canadian drivers. The government now faces a difficult choice: continue shielding local industry, or make EVs more accessible to the public. Trade disputes with the Trump administration and a shortage of affordable EVs have forced Ottawa to rethink its strategy. Political tensions have made collaboration with the US more complicated, while Canadian consumers grow increasingly frustrated by limited options and high prices. Canadian consumers see hope for cheaper EVs, while auto workers fear job losses. The prospect of affordable Chinese vehicles is appealing to families, but it raises tough questions about the future of Canadian manufacturing jobs and the stability of the auto sector. Meanwhile, US automakers and politicians worry about Chinese competition entering North America through Canada. They fear that a flood of low-cost EVs could threaten American jobs and undermine years of investment in domestic production. The stakes are high. This decision could redefine the auto industry and Canada-US relations for years. Both countries must weigh economic interests, environmental goals, and the future of their workforces as they navigate this complex issue. The world is watching as Canada weighs its next move. What happens next could set a precedent for how nations balance trade, innovation, and national interests in the age of electric vehicles. Tariffs are taxes on imports designed to make foreign goods like Chinese EVs more expensive. Canada's 100% tariff on Chinese EVs was meant to protect local jobs and encourage domestic manufacturing. For consumers, this has meant higher prices and fewer choices, as affordable Chinese models are kept out of reach. Billions in subsidies have gone to companies like Stellantis and Volkswagen to build up Canada's EV industry. But the promised wave of affordable, Canadian-made EVs hasn't arrived, leaving buyers frustrated. Protectionism can stifle competition and innovation and often leads to trade retaliation. Now, with high prices and unmet promises, Ottawa is rethinking whether tariffs are helping or hurting Canadians. The debate is about more than economics. It's about the future of Canada's auto industry. Canada is at a crossroads, considering a dramatic shift in its approach to Chinese electric vehicles. This possible tariff reversal is being driven by two powerful forces: a persistent lack of affordable EVs for Canadian consumers, and the increasingly strained relationship with the United States, its largest trading partner. As the world accelerates toward electrification, Canadians are feeling left behind, with limited options and high prices at dealerships. Domestic automakers have doubled down on producing expensive SUVs and luxury models, leaving a significant gap in the entry-level market. Chinese brands, known for their affordable and innovative EVs, could fill this void if Canada decides to drop its tariffs and open the market. For many Canadians, this could mean finally having access to electric vehicles that fit their budgets and lifestyles, but the stakes go beyond cars. In exchange for opening its doors to Chinese EVs, Canada could regain valuable access to China for key agricultural exports like canola and pork, sectors that have suffered under recent trade tensions. This move could revitalize rural economies and restore balance to Canada's trade portfolio. Meanwhile, the US has imposed new tariffs on Canadian goods and signaled its intent to attract auto jobs away from Canada. This has left Canadian workers and policymakers increasingly anxious about the future of the country's manufacturing sector. Ottawa is now questioning the value of sticking to a US-led trade strategy that seems to undermine Canadian interests. The government faces mounting pressure to chart a more independent course that prioritizes Canadian jobs and economic resilience. The once bright dream of a unified North American EV industry is fading fast, as automakers shift production south of the border. This trend threatens to hollow out Canada's auto sector and diminish its role in the global EV supply chain. By opening the door to Chinese EVs, Canada could not only lower costs for consumers, but also accelerate progress toward its climate goals and support other vital sectors of the economy. The move could spark innovation and competition, making EVs more accessible to all Canadians. Ultimately, it's a pragmatic, if risky move that signals Canada is ready to assert its independence and won't simply follow Washington's lead, even if it means navigating uncharted territory in global trade. If tariffs are lifted, Tesla stands to gain by importing cheaper models from its Shanghai plant, lowering prices for Canadians. Chinese automakers like BYD and XPeng would finally enter the Canadian market, offering affordable, tech-savvy EVs. This would give consumers more choice and could make EVs accessible to middle-income families. But the big three, GM, Ford, Stellantis, would face fierce competition, threatening their business models and jobs. The North American market could split. Canadians drive Chinese EVs, while Americans can't buy them. This could spark a gray market, with Americans seeking Canadian imports, complicating trade enforcement. The once integrated market would fracture, with each country following its own path. The result: more choice for Canadians, but major disruption for the industry. US-Canada trade relations have soured, with new American tariffs on all Canadian goods and paused EV incentives for Canadian factories. US officials openly admit they want to shift auto jobs south, alarming Ottawa. Canada is fighting back, threatening legal action against companies like Stellantis for moving production after receiving subsidies. Removing tariffs on Chinese EVs is now seen as a way for Canada to assert its independence and economic sovereignty. The escalating tit-for-tat threatens the CUSMA trade agreement and the future of the integrated auto market. Industry groups warn that new US tariffs could cost Canada billions and tens of thousands of jobs. The North American auto market is fracturing, with each country pursuing its own interests. The stakes for Canada's economy and workers have never been higher. Trade policy isn't just numbers, it's about real people and jobs. Stellantis' move of Jeep Compass production from Ontario to Illinois cost 3,000 Canadian jobs, while creating 5,000 in the US. Local communities in Canada are hit hard, with ripple effects on suppliers and families. GM has also cut EV production in Ontario, deepening uncertainty for workers. Each shift south erodes Canada's industrial base and union power. If Canada opens to Chinese EVs, new jobs could be created as Chinese automakers might build plants locally. But these jobs may differ in pay and union protections, raising new challenges for workers. The future of Canadian auto employment is uncertain. Old jobs are vanishing, and new ones may not offer the same security. The stakes are personal for thousands of families across the country. Canadian leaders are taking a tougher stance, threatening legal action against automakers that move jobs after taking subsidies. They argue that these companies have a responsibility to the Canadian workers and communities that have supported them for years. The government is exploring various legal avenues to ensure that these corporations honor their commitments. Unions like Unifor demand retaliation against US goods and legal action against companies shifting jobs south. They are calling for a more aggressive stance from the government to protect Canadian jobs and industries. Union leaders are organizing protests and rallies to bring attention to the issue, emphasizing the need for solidarity among workers. They fear opening to Chinese EVs could replace secure, unionized jobs with less stable ones. The potential influx of cheaper, foreign-made electric vehicles is seen as a direct threat to the domestic auto industry. Workers are concerned about the long-term implications for their livelihoods and the overall health of the Canadian economy. In the US, officials unapologetically pursue policies to lure investment away from Canada and Mexico. They're offering lucrative incentives to attract automakers and other industries, creating a competitive environment that puts pressure on neighboring countries. This aggressive approach is part of a broader strategy to strengthen the US economy at the expense of its trade partners. The US sees Canada's potential deal with China as a betrayal of their united front. American officials argue that such a move undermines the collaborative efforts to counterbalance China's growing economic influence. This perceived betrayal has led to increased tensions and a sense of mistrust between the two allies. The divide between the two countries is growing, with each side prioritizing its own interests. As both nations navigate their economic challenges, the once strong partnership is showing signs of strain. The focus on national interests over mutual cooperation is leading to a more fragmented relationship. Canada is caught between protecting its alliance with the US and meeting the needs of its own workers and consumers. The government faces a delicate balancing act, trying to maintain good relations with its southern neighbor while also addressing domestic economic concerns. This complex situation requires careful navigation to avoid further escalation. The US is playing a zero-sum game, where its gain is Canada's loss. This adversarial approach is creating a win-lose scenario, with each country vying for economic advantage. The competitive nature of this relationship is making it difficult to find common ground and work towards mutually beneficial solutions. The rhetoric is heating up, making compromise harder to find. As political leaders on both sides ramp up their rhetoric, the possibility of reaching a diplomatic resolution becomes increasingly remote. The escalating tensions are contributing to a more polarized and contentious atmosphere, complicating efforts to resolve the trade disputes amicably. Canada faces two stark choices, each with lasting consequences. Dropping tariffs on Chinese EVs could bring affordable cars and new investment, but risk US retaliation and more job losses in traditional auto plants. The integrated supply chain could unravel, and the CUSMA agreement might be at risk. Keeping tariffs would preserve the status quo and appease Washington, but keep prices high and limit consumer choice. Canadian exporters would lose out on regaining access to China's market. Either way, Canada's relationship with the US and the future of its auto industry hang in the balance. The decision will shape jobs, trade, and climate progress for decades. Canada must choose between short-term relief and long-term alliances. The world is watching as Canada decides its automotive future.